Good money, who means, who yaketh the card games that Daddy plays. He's I, KB the Pug. I just finished my park walk. It was a big park walk. And I want to go home, but Daddy says we gotta film the Super Deck Sunday episode. And he said that he wanted me to do the introduction. And I kind of feel bad for him. I'm not going to say why, because I don't want to spoil the video of my park trip. But I feel bad, so I'm going to do this intro. And then I'm going to sit here and be the most awesomest pug while my daddy does his Super Deck Sunday video. Sunday. And then, yeah. And I'm going to eat some bacon. And it's going to be a nice day. Okay? So happy Easter, first off. Yes, happy Easter. It's important to say. Yes. And enjoy this special Easter edition of the video series that is Super Deck Sundays. Sundays. Okay day? Okay day. Daddy, did I do a good introduction? Yes, Gaiba, you did a good introduction. Thank you. Okay day. It's time for Super Deck Sunday, as Kaiba said. And as Kaiba also said, it is the Easter version of Super Deck Sunday today. So we have something very special for you guys. Now, last year at Easter, well, I have a little story actually before we get into this. So, 2 years ago in the fall, probably one of my easily top 3 favorite Magic sets of all time came out. That being Bloomburrow. At least from anything that I've ever played or opened, Bloomburrow is definitely among my absolute favorite things that I've ever opened or looked at. And it is definitely my favorite in-house Magic set, I think, which might disappoint some people who played the MTG for a really long time. But I really feel like Bloomburrow brought Magic back to what Magic was supposed to be, and I think it kicked ass. So, yeah. So when Bloomburrow came out, I was like crazy pumped for it because first off, Magic lore, cool. Second off, I love furry animals, like Kaiba, obviously over here. That's me! Yes, that's you. So, but I also love like anything like squirrels, rabbits, raccoons, all those cute little baby animals. My favorite animal is an elephant. I've had birds before as pets. Like, I adore the animal kingdom. I'm a very animal kind of person. So, when this set was coming out, I was like crazy pumped for it. And I went like extra early to the store because I knew they were only going to get 2 copies of each deck, so that I can make sure that I got in line for my copy of the Mrs. Bumbleflower deck. Now, when I got home and I opened my Mrs. Bumbleflower deck and did the video on the channel for the first time with this deck, I expressed how much I adored the deck overall and how cute a lot of the stuff was, and I thought it was really flavorful. But I felt a little bit disappointed, ever so slightly disappointed, because I was promised a bunny deck. And if I remember correctly, the original deck that this came out as might have 4 cards that can be considered rabbit creature type. And I think all the other creatures are different creature types and other things. There's a lot of humans in this deck too. So like, while I love this deck, and it is one of my favorite decks, and last Easter I went over this deck and did a profile of this deck for you guys. So that is actually one of the first episodes of Super Deck Sunday that was ever done. So that profile, I will link that video, and I'll actually link the original box opening in the description. But this deck, it kicks ass. It really does. It's an amazing deck overall. It has insane value in it. And I mean, I boosted the snot out of this deck too. I leaned heavily into what this deck was trying to do in terms of just massive amount of card draw is involved in this deck. There's a lot of handing out gifts and stuff in this deck. And then my favorite personal part of this deck is just making Mrs. Bumbleflower a massive flying bunny and swinging in for commander damage with her, because she has vigilance, which is insane. To give Mrs. Bumbleflower 1/5, first off, making her really hard to remove in terms of combat, and then give her vigilance and optional flying each turn, was a crazy move by by Wizards and Magic in terms of Magic the Gathering. With that said, I was, as I say, over the moon with this deck. I love this deck, and I have a pretty solid win record with this deck, even though Snoop will scold me, of course, but there are only 34 lands in this deck. I checked it this morning. But with that said, with all the different card draw and everything that's going on in this deck, the 34 lands has never been an issue for me. As long as I can get 2 in my opening hand, I'm usually solid. With that said, we are not going to do this deck profile today again, because I haven't had a chance to really go over it and edit it too much. I might add an extra land or 2 into it. There are a couple cards I'm thinking about pulling, and I might add a couple cards back in. So this is one of those ones that I'm putting it on the shelf to be edited, and it'll probably be featured in another Super Deck Sunday later on, where I'll go over all the different cards that are in it at that time, once it's fully upgraded to its final state. Because all the decks that I'm currently featuring recently in Super Deck Sunday, I don't intend to do any main upgrades on unless there's like some crazy card that comes out that just has to go in that deck because it fits too well. My goal is to try and get all my decks to their most fun and playable versions, where they're doing what I want them to do. Whether that be something that is actually optimal or not, doesn't matter. And then once I've done that, then I have all my leftover cards to keep building more decks with, of course. But anywho, so what we're going to do today, though, as I say, we're not going to look at this Mrs. Bumbleflower deck. We're going to look at this Mrs. Bumbleflower deck. So you may recall last fall, my dad actually took me to Costco and had got me a Mrs. Bumbleflower commander deck because I was looking to get myself a second copy of it. So he had gotten me this second copy of the deck back in the fall, shortly before my accident. So thankfully, because if he had taken me after my accident, I probably wouldn't have actually purchased anything. But yeah, so I ended up getting this extra copy of Mrs. Bumbleflower, and this version of Mrs. Bumbleflower is going to be a much more entertaining version for me, because this is the kind of Mrs. Bumbleflower that I was hoping to get. Now, granted, it is not the most fluent deck, let's say. It's not the most powerful deck by any means. It's definitely lower tier, but I made it crazy fun, and I made it into what I was originally hoping I would get out of Bloomburrow, which is an actual bunny deck. So, with the exception of one creature in here, technically 2, but technically not. There is a changeling shapeshifter in here, which looks like a rabbit anyways to me, so I'm counting it as a bunny. But there is one creature that is not a bunny, and we're going to get into what that creature is later on and why it's in here. But the main purpose of this deck was simply to build a really cute Easter-themed deck that is full of rabbits to give me what I originally was hoping I would get out of Bloomburrow, which was a bunny commander deck. So we're just going to put that here. And we're just going to get into everything straight away, because I don't want to keep this video going too long, because Kappa wants to get home. And I have to be at work extra early tomorrow, since we had a day off on Friday. So, we're going to cover Mrs. Bloomburrow, or Mrs. Bumbleflower now. Sorry, Mrs. Bloomburrow. She might as well have been Mrs. Bloomburrow, to be honest, but Mrs. Bumbleflower. 1 green and white and blue. To get a 1/5 onto the field, she has vigilance. She's a rabbit citizen. Whenever you cast a spell, target opponent draws a card. You put a +1/+1 counter on target creature, and it gets flying until end of turn. Then, if this is the second time this ability resolved this turn, you get to draw 2 cards. After the second time, you really don't need to resolve it a third time unless you're just trying to get more creatures to have more flying. But in general, pretty solid deck, pretty solid commander all around. There's a lot of complaints actually about her, and she gets used a lot by people in RD. CEDH I've heard too, which I don't play that version, but my tokens, I've got a food. I've got 3 copies. To be honest, I would have gone with 3 of the same copy, but I just don't have those anymore per se, so I went with 3 different. And then I've got 6 little bunnies here, and they are the ever cutest little bunny rabbits tokens, so I am very happy with those. We're going to do the lands. We've got our Terramorphic Expanse and our Evolving Wilds. I've got a couple of full art Bloomburrow forests that I had left over from my original commander deck that I built. That one up there that I just put away has one of every season. I think it might not have fall for the forest. I think it had like the anarchy version of the forest instead, which it is what it is. I couldn't find the fall one. And we've got the spring one too. So we got the spring and the winter, which is cute. Moving right along, we've just got our regular lands now, our basics, which most of these came with the deck. I think I added in a couple, but not too many. We got ourselves a Seaside Citadel, a Sea Chrome Coast, Canopy Vista, Prairie Stream, Razor Verge Thicket, Temple of Enlightenment, Glacial Fortress, Sun Petal Grove, Temple Mystery, Hinterland Harbor, Temple of Plenty. I added in an Oak Hollow Village because if it's an almost entirely rabbit deck, it just seems stupid not to. Giving +1/+1 counters to all the different rabbits that enter if I pay 1 green and tap this is phenomenal. Kabira Plateau is a neat little land. It counts as a plains. Well, no, it doesn't actually count as a plains, but it taps for white. But it also gives me a spell on the other side where it can deal damage equal to the number of creatures it controlled to target creature or planeswalker. That feels like a really solid include for this deck because there are going to be a lot of creatures on the field. And so if there's a pesky planeswalker that I need to deal with, that is a very nice utility to have in the back. We have an Exotic Orchard, our command tower, and I threw in a Path of Ancestry because, again, it's an all bunnies deck, so it seems stupid not to. Gives me all the extra scrying, which is nice. Oh my goodness, Kaiba. You're being very patient. Yes, I'm going to give you the rest of the bacon at the end of the video. The humans can watch you eat it while I do the outro. Next up, we're going to do the sorceries and instants. Now, as I go through this, you're going to notice, or no, wait, do I have this backwards? No, I wanted to do this way. Sorceries and instances first, yes. Spoilers of a few creatures there by accident. I wanted to do these first because I wanted to, you're going to notice a sort of pattern here, and as the pattern emerges, I want to explain what the pattern is there for. So, first off, we've got a few bunny cards and other, like, ones that came from Bloomburrow because I wanted to include as many Bloomburrow cards as I could in this deck. So I've got the Farseek with the bunny on it. I've got the Paw Patch formation, which is pretty solid. The flying creature is like a meh thing, but the ability to destroy an enchantment or draw a card and create a food token for 2 is decent, I think. Wear Down lets me get a couple things back. Or no, lets me destroy artifacts and enchantments as well. So I've got that double covered. Swords to Plowshares to deal with a creature. High Stride to give my creature some reach and untap it. Rabbit Response, so we can get all our creatures +2/+1, and I'm going to have a rabbit when I play this probably, so I'll get to Scry 2 as well. Hop to it to get me some of those rabbit tokens that you saw. Peerless Recycling to get me back a permanent, or potentially 2, probably 2 to be perfectly honest. Next up, we have a few or 2 really probably pretty powerful cards that I just kind of tossed in for extra bonus because, like I say, this is going to have pretty big board state going on. So this one lets me give all my creatures +1/+0 and indestructible until end of turn. And this one here is going to give me a massive life gain if my field is full before it gets, say, board wiped. Next up, I threw in a bunch of low-cost counter spells to try and help protect my bunnies. So I've got Loose Focus, which I love this one especially because of the replicate ability. So I can keep paying blue as much as I want, and for each time I pay blue, I just copy the spell. So essentially, if I want, I can target the same spell 4 times with Lose Focus, and then the person would have to pay 8 in theory, or they just give up. Unwind, counter target creatures or counter target non-creature spell, which is fine. The best part about this one is that I get to untap the lands that I tap for it, though, so that's a nice little bonus. While this deck does not have any lands that tap for multiple lands per se, it does let me at least unfilter back to, say, the right 3 lands I need to play another spell potentially from my hand. Long River's Pull. I like this one because I can counter a creature spell or give a card to somebody, and then I can counter whatever I want. Negate for a non-creature spell. And then this one is a particularly nice one for this deck because it's going to do both of the things I want this deck to do. It allows me to counter whatever is coming into play. And then in addition to that, I also can return a creature I control to my hand. Or to the owner's hand, but it's going to be my hand because I'm not trying to take people's creatures with this deck. Now, this is the core component thing that I was talking about. I want to be doing this as much as possible. I want to be returning things to my hand and putting them back out onto the battlefield. I want to be exiling them and returning them to the battlefield because of the main goal of this deck, which you're going to see in the creatures. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I think you probably got an idea of what I'm doing already if you've seen the most recent bunny cards that came out in Foundations, for example. Parting Gust. 2 white. I can gift a fish. And then, what I like about the fish that I gift is the token doesn't have the ability to attack without being blocked. There are fish that can do that. This, though, exile a target non-token creature. If the gift wasn't promised, return that creature to the battlefield under its owner's control with a +1/+1 counter at the beginning of the end step. This card, chances are I'm not actually going to be giving a fish out because, again, I'm going to be targeting myself a lot of the times. But the wonderful thing about this card and the majority of the cards in this stack going forward is that they give me the option to target other people's stuff if I want to, or I target my own things. So the ability to actually manipulate either board gives me significantly more advantage, I think, in terms of gameplay. Next up, Aurora Procession. I love this one. Return target card from your graveyard to your hand. I can pick anything. I can pick any of my instants and sorceries. I can pick any of my enchantments or artifacts, or I can pick the creature that is the key component of this deck. Endless Detour, same idea. Except this one allows me to hit a spell, non-land permanent, or a card in my graveyard, So I can do anybody's graveyard first off, again, helping to deal with something where somebody's getting something back we don't want on the board necessarily. Or I can do this to a spell that's coming in to just send it back to the deck to prevent somebody from being able to actually pull it off. But again, in particular, I also have the ability to target my own things with this. And that is fantastic. So like Aurora Procession, I can get back anything from my graveyard with this. It doesn't go to my hand, it goes to the top of my deck, but that's not going to be an issue with Bumbleflower letting me draw constantly. Unsummon, return target creature to its owner's hand. Rescue, return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. Snap, return target creature to its owner's hand and untap 2 lands. So you can actually potentially do 2 instants that turn. Run away together. 2 target creatures, one controlled by different players, so one by me, one by somebody else. This one is my favorite, though, in this deck. I've been trying to figure out a way to work this into a deck, and this is definitely the best deck to put it in, I think. So, another round. XX2 and white. Exile any number of target creatures you control, then return them to the battlefield under their owner's control, and then repeat this process X number of times. X more times, sorry. So, if you don't pay anything into X, you're only going to do this once. But if you happen to actually pay, let's say, 2 extra mana into this, you can do this twice. Then 3 times if you pay 4 mana, and so on and so forth. The idea of this being, I can basically exile things from my board, return them to the battlefield, exile things from my board, return them to the battlefield multiple times in a turn. And again, if you have a good idea of what I'm doing with this deck already, leave a comment in the... leave me a comment with a timestamp, that's what I wanted to say. So that I know when you figured out what the deck was doing. Because I'm very curious to see how many people figure it out before I show you the creatures pile. But this is definitely a major, major card for this deck because of that reason. Next up, I have Tempt with Bunnies. I want bunnies, and I'm sure other people will like having bunnies too, probably. So this is a pretty solid card all around. But even if nobody wants other bunnies, I still get to draw a card and make a bunny myself at least. Oh, and everybody else can draw cards too. I forgot about that part. So yeah, really solid card for this deck. For the common good, I actually took this out of my original bunny deck and put it into this deck because this deck has way more focus on the token making than my original bunny deck does. So for the common good, X, X, and green, create X tokens that are copies of target token you control. And then all your tokens gain indestructible until end of turn, and you gain 1 life for each token you control. So I get massive life gain out of this card, first off. Second off, it protects my creatures from a board wipe. And finally, the best part, I can create X copies of any token I make on the board. And as you're about to see, there's a really good reason why I like this card, because it combos insanely well with the next card. Or, is it the next card? No, it's not the next card. It combos insanely well with one of the enchantments I have. And when we get to that pile, I will bring this card back up to show you. But actually, I'll just set it aside over here for now. Anywho, final card in this pile is Overrun, because why not? I did have to pull this out of a different deck, and I'm probably going to end up either buying another copy or finding something else. Well, not buying, because I can't afford to buy cards right now. Trading for another copy, like I did trade for some cards in this deck last night. Or a couple nights ago, sorry. But, yeah. Because Overrun is just an insanely good card, and I only have so many copies. I think I have like 7 copies of it, and they're all in decks right now. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. Basically, all my bunnies are going to become impossible to deal with once I play this. So for 1 turn, I can just run wild and destroy everybody on the board, hopefully. And those are the instants and sorceries. Yes, Kaiba, I know. Your patience is starting to run thin. I'm sorry. Dai's very excited about this deck. Okay, next up, we're doing the bunnies pile. And then the last pile is the artifacts and enchantments. So we've got the Tamiyo, which was included into this deck. Tamiyo is just way too good not to include in this deck, first off. But second off, bunny. So, choose up to 2 target creatures until your next turn. Whenever either of those creatures deals combat damage, you draw a card. -2 untap 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap, or tap to up to 2 target non-land permanents. They don't untap during your controller's next untap step. And finally, -7, draw 3 cards. You get an emblem. You may cast spells without paying their mana costs from your hand, which just means you basically are omniscient from the rest of the game. Chances of you pulling this off are pretty slim, I figured, but I do have a couple ways of getting Tamiyo back, as you saw. And in addition to that, my main goal is to just do the first one, to be perfectly honest. Getting the extra card draw in this deck is fantastic. And I did not include as many card draw spells as you've seen clearly from my sorcery and instant piles as I had in the previous deck version of this, because that's not the main focus of this deck. I do also have Queen in here, though, because giving everybody that extra card draw and an extra life feels like a good reason that they might not try and smack my bunnies until my bunnies are ready to smack them. As you noticed from the title, this is the Bouncing Bunnies Beatdown deck. That was the final verdict in the votes, which was a really tight vote, and I was impressed by how close that was. So that made me feel really good about the fact that both of my titles seemed like they were appropriate for this deck. Next up, I threw in a copy of Rabberoo Troop, and I threw in the hollow version, the only hollow version I had pulled, because Bunny. What I love about this one, though, is the landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield, this creature gets flying until end of turn on its own, so I don't have to worry about triggering it with Bumble Flower. And I gain a life. She's a little expensive to get on the field, but I mean, she's going to give me a decent amount of life, so I'm not going to complain about that. Hazard Root Herbalist, 2 and a green for a 1/4. Whenever you attack, target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and if it was a token, it also gets Death Touch. That feels a little vicious for this deck, but at the same time, Bunnies with Death Touch just feels kind of cute and also scary. Druid of the Spade, 2 and a green for a 2/3. As long as you control a token, it also gets +2/+0 and has trample, so this one becomes a pretty solid bunny on its own as well. Like the Rabberoo Troop. Tree Guard Duo. When it enters until end of turn, target creature you control gets Vigilance and +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control. This is kind of like a closer for me. Basically, my goal would be to try and probably get this onto the board when I have a crazy amount of tokens, and while this is out, so that I can give this thing a massive amount of +X bonus to its power, so it would become like, say, 10-9 or something, and then swings with trample. And if I can also put a +1/+1 counter on it that turn, I can give it flying. Just crazy nonsense like that. Paw Patch Recruit. I had a full art version that I pulled actually from the Bloomburrow deck when I opened this one. Also the hollow sorcery that let me give a fish. I forget what it was called. We just looked at it though. But that card also came from this the 2-card pack that used to be included with Commander decks that is no longer included because Wizards is cheap. This has Offspring too, so if I pay an extra 2 when this comes in, I can make a copy of it. It has trample, it's a 2/1. And whenever a creature I control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, I get to put +1/+1 counter on a creature I control other than the creature that was targeted. So if they target this, I can put a +1/+1 counter on any of my other bunnies. And the best part is, if I make the Offspring, then I have 2 copies of it, so I can actually put 2 +1/+1 counters on something. Bravekin Duo, 1 white for a 1/1, pay 1, tap, and target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Pretty solid. Nice little rabbit mouse. So we have a rabbit frog and a rabbit mouse. Next up, Intrepid Rabbit, 2 and a white for a 3/2. Has Offspring 1, which is solid, so I can make a copy of it. And when this enters, creature I control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So I could essentially give one creature +2/+2, which isn't really the reason to care about that. It's just having the extra copies is more bunnies. As you're noticing, the theme basically of this deck is to just essentially flood the field full of bunnies, because the one thing that bunnies do, having owned bunnies in my lifetime, I've had pet rabbits. The one thing that the bunnies do a lot of is massive producing of more bunnies. Basically, bunnies make bunnies. And that's what this deck is designed to do, is just keep making lots and lots of bunnies. So, Harstride Host, or another bunny, enters the battlefield. Target creature I control gets +1/+0 until end turn. And if it's the second time this happened, I get to draw a card. This will happen if multiple bunnies come in at once. It's still going to see all the different bunnies, so that is pretty solid. Head of the Homestead, 3 and 2 green or white in any combination. When this thing enters, you get to make 2 extra bunnies. Warren Elder, 1 and a white for 2/2, 3 and a white, and all your creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. To be perfectly honest, I'm probably not going to pay that cost. I mostly just included this in here because it is another bunny, and I wanted to have as many bunnies as possible. Ultimately, I ended up with 25 bunnies, including the shapeshifter that I mentioned earlier, and 1 non-bunny creature, which is at the end of this pile. Hinterland Sanctifier, 1 white for a 1/2. Whenever another creature enters, I gain a life. So as long as I keep putting in bunnies, I keep gaining life, which is fantastic. Valley Quest Caller, 1 and a white, 2/3. Whenever 1 or more rabbits, birds, bats, or mice you control enter, scry 1. Now, unfortunately, this will only get triggered once if a pile of creatures comes in, but it will still be triggered every time one of my bunnies comes in, which is nice. And it also gives all my bunnies and those other kinds of creatures +1/+1. Now, what I think is cool about this is if I'm understanding it correctly, I think this guy here would actually get +2/+2 when this is out. Since it's a rabbit and a mouse, I think it would get the count twice, but I didn't get a chance to check that online as a rule check, so I'm not sure about that. Phineas Archer is heading up the rear, almost rear of this pile of bunnies, because he is a 2/2 with vigilance and reach, and he's really cheap to get into play. And whenever he attacks, I get a +1/+1 counter on each other creature I control that's a token or a rabbit. Basically, my entire army, with the exception of that one creature I'm saving at the very end of this pile, will get +1/+1 counters whenever this thing attacks. And then if my creatures have total power 10 or greater, I get to also draw a card. So more card draw gets me more access to more bunnies, more lands, etc. This deck has 35 lands in total, which I thought was a pretty decent number. Beauregard Mentor. Again, super cheap to get into play. And what I love about this guy is he's trample, but he's also +X/+X, or star power, sorry, not +X/+X, where his power and toughness are equal to the number of creatures you control. So if he's out there by himself, he's a 1/1. But if he's out there with all my bunny tokens, then he is a huge bunny rabbit. And if you guessed it, congratulations. But I am now revealing this is the goal of the deck. I was only able to get my hands on 7 copies of Heir Apparent. I think I have an 8th one somewhere, but I looked everywhere in my collection. I couldn't find it. And then Good Friday, Kai was going to tell this story anyways in his park trip video, but I'm going to tell it here too. On Good Friday, I got offered a trade, which I'm not going to say what I gave away, but I got 4 copies of Heir Apparent for the 2 cards that I traded. And I'm pretty happy about that, to be honest, because it would have made this deck a lot harder to do if I had only 3 copies. Like I say, I originally thought I had a 4th copy somewhere, and I just couldn't find it for the life of me, and it was kind of nerve-wracking. And then I checked online, and I was surprised because Paradox was actually open. So shout out to Paradox TCG for being open on Good Friday. And the guy who I traded with asked me not to shout him out, but I'm just going to say thank you to you too, because you're an awesome dude. And so, like I said, I traded a couple cards and got 4 copies of Heir Apparent to give me a total of 7 for the deck, which 7 is lucky, I think. And 8 is luckier according to Chinese lore, but I like 7. And so with the 7 copies and all the sorceries and instants that you've seen earlier, basically the goal of this deck is to get 3 or 4 copies of Heir Apparent out on the field and buff them with my commander, and then have 3 copies of Heir Apparent potentially in my hand that I can flip in, flip out, flip in, flip out, flip in, flip out. Because the goal is to use its ability, which the ability of Heir Apparent is as follows. 1 and a white gives you a 2/2. Whenever this creature enters, create a number of 1/1 white rabbit creature tokens equal to the number of other creatures you control named Heir Apparent. So it does not see itself. So you have to have at least 1 on the field in order to get a token. But if you can get 3 on the field and you can keep flipping them in and out, you're getting 3 tokens every time one comes into play. That is insane value in this deck. And that is the big goal of, again, for common good, is to just make a huge number of copies of the bunny token, potentially. That's one of the goals. And yeah. Next up, though, we have our last 2 creatures in this pile. We have Barkform Harvester. Now, I can see an argument being made that maybe this is supposed to be a raccoon, or it's supposed to be some other kind of creature. Maybe it's supposed to be a squirrel. I can see this being a bunny, though. And that's the way I'm picturing in my head. In my head, this is a bunny. And since it has changeling, it does actually count as a bunny. So it will still get the buff from all my bunny things. Now, what I like about that, though, is, again, I think, if I'm right, because it's changeling, it would, where is that one card? I think I went by it already. Yes. If it's out there with Valley Quest Caller, I think Valley Quest Caller would see it as all 4 of these types, and it would become a 6/7. I think. Again, this is something I really wanted to check, but I didn't get a chance to, but you can let me know in the comments if I'm right, but I think that would work that way. However, that's not the main reason for why I included it. Bark Form Harvester is in here because of the 2 mana ability here, where I can pay 2 and put a card from my graveyard on the bottom of my library. Essentially, this is a way to get back my Heir Apparents. If they keep going to the graveyard, I can get them back into my deck so that you can't exile them, hopefully. It's a way to get back Phineas and the Beauregard Mentor as well. Those 2 are key components. So is Valley Questcaller and Hinterland Sanctifier. The other bunnies, they're kind of cute, and they're in there because they're bunnies, but they're not as valuable. Maybe the Rabaroo is pretty good, and I do like the one that gives Death Touch. But ultimately, the rest of the bunnies aren't as important to the deck as this core component of the deck is. They're just there because they're bunnies, and it is a bunny deck. All right. Almost there, Kaiba. Last pile. I know. You're being so patient. I'm so proud of you. Yes, I am. You're very patient. Oh, I forgot the last creature before I did put the creatures back. Oops. The last creature is super important to this deck, and it is not a bunny. It is Lily Splash Mentor. Lily Splash Mentor is insanely good for this deck because 2 green and blue gets a 4/4 onto the board with reach. So I have a blocker in case I need it. But the big reason it's there is because I can pay 1 green and blue as many times as I want per turn on my turn only because of the sorcery limitations to exile a creature I control, return it to the battlefield under my control because, again, I'm not stealing other people's stuff, with a +1/+1 counter on it. This is a good way to buff my Heir Apparents in the original get-go when they first get onto the field. And it's a good way to trigger a Heir Apparent's ability twice when it comes into play. So I could play the Heir Apparent, get it onto the field, trigger the ability with all the other Heir Apparents that are on the field, get a bunch of bunnies, pay this, exile it, then it returns to the battlefield, I get another pile of bunnies, and that Heir Apparent gets a +1/+1 counter. This is the reason why this got included into this deck. And the original reason why the other title of this deck was going to be Oops, All Bunnies, or Oops, All But One Bunnies, because this is the only non-bunny card. But I feel like she's, in my mind, Lily Splash Mentor is the best friend of my commander. She is Mrs. Bumbleflower's friend. She comes over for tea, they hang out, and she helps Mrs. Bumbleflower with her bunny collection. Just to help them grow. Because you want them to grow big and strong. And then our final pile are the artifacts and enchantments. This pile you're going to see helps me a lot with, again, the goal of this deck, which is to get the Heir Apparents to flip in and out. But you're also going to see something really cool at the end of this pile that is going to make this deck completely busted to a certain extent for a bracket 1. Soul Ring, classic. And I include the one from the Bloomburrow deck just because I really like the artwork on it. Carrot Cake had to be included in this deck because it's a rabbit-based deck. It's going to give me bunnies when it comes into play, and it will when it leaves play. And it counts as a food, so I get to sacrifice it and gain 3 life, which is pretty good all around. It also just is, I mean, come on, bunnies love Carrot Cake, right? Mrs. Bumbleflower's Share Pot is also an auto-include in this deck because bunny. When Bumbleflower's Share Pot enters, I make a food token. And I can pay 5, tap this, sacrifice it, and destroy a target non-land permanent. So it's nice to have it on the field just as a threat to any planeswalkers or any potential issues that I can't target with one of my instants of sorceries if I can't get access to them. But I mean, like I say, it's more of a flavor include than anything else, to be perfectly honest. Swiftfoot Boots to protect my commander because I want to try and keep her on the board as much as possible. She's arguably one of the most expensive things in this deck, and the commander tax is going to get pretty hefty if I have to keep getting her out. Patchwork Banner gives me a nice little mana rock to add with my Soul Ring. lets me filter for any of the 3 colors that I need. But my favorite part about this one, of course, is that when it comes into play, you choose a creature type, obviously bunnies, and all my bunnies are going to get +1/+1. So it's going to boost my entire army by an extra +1/+1 for being out there, and give me a extra mana available. Banner of Kinship, I really considered saving this for later to put into maybe a mouse deck if I have a chance to build one. But I'm going to have to buy the mouse commander that I want to get. So when I get to that part, that's when I will buy another copy of this probably. And that's going to be a couple years down the line probably at this point. Anywho, as this artifact comes into play, you also choose a creature type, bunnies. And when this enters, you put a fellowship counter on it for each creature you control of the chosen type. So you want to put this one in, you want to put this one into play early, you want to put this one into play later in the game. Because you want to at least have 5 or 6 bunnies when this comes into play so you can get all the counters on this, and then all the creatures of the chosen type get +1/+1 for each fellowship counter on this. I do not have a way to proliferate this deck, so there's not a way to make more fellowship counters on this. So again, you want to time this. Timing is key for this card, but it is a fantastic way to boost your army significantly going into the end game. I love this card for this deck. Idol of Endurance is insane. So when it enters the battlefield, you're going to exile all creature cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard. This essentially lets me exile all of my heir apparents and almost 2/3 of my bunny army get exiled by this card if they're in the graveyard when it comes into play. Not that I necessarily want all my bunnies in the graveyard. I'm just saying this is a fantastic... I gotta say, I'm starting to use fantastic the way I used to use great. And I'm getting really tongue-tied, so I need a sip of Coke. Refreshing. Okay. What makes this card phenomenal is... you can pay 1, tap it, and until end of turn, you may cast a creature spell from among the cards that were exiled by this thing without paying its mana cost. So I get a free heir apparent, essentially, from playing this, potentially. Or whatever bunny I want to bring back. The other reason why I like this card, though, is if somebody decides to wipe this off the board, all the creatures that were exiled by this come back to the graveyard because of the until Idol of Endurance leaves the battlefield trigger. So that is awesome. This card is one of those things where it's a double-edged sword. You can target it and you get rid of it, but if you do, I get everything back to the graveyard anyway, so I still have access to this stuff. Whereas a lot of cards that do this kind of stuff, once they're exiled, if you remove that card, you're not going to be able to get those things out of exile. So I love this card. Next up, Gossip's Talent. This one is for dealing with the creatures on the field, and there's actually 3 enchantments here coming up that are all going to deal with creatures on the field. So whenever a creature you control enters, you surveil one. That part I kind of don't like as much because I don't want to send my stuff to the graveyard necessarily, but if I do end up sending a bunch of stuff to the graveyard, that's what Idol of Endurance is for. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. That is a fantastic way to get my heir apparents to attack if I want them to, or any of my other bunnies as long as they can keep their power low. Though I honestly don't care about level 2. Basically, I'm just leveling it up to level 2 to get to level 3, because this is the one that I care about. When a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you can exile it, then return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. So, if I keep one of my heir apparents low powered, if I can keep it like 3/3 and not boost it, then I can constantly allow that one to attack a person directly, deal damage, exile it, and bring it back to boost my bunny army some more. If, however, there is an issue with my stuff getting blocked, I have a way around that too. Cunning Evasion, 1 and a blue. Whenever a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return that creature to its owner's hand. I attack you with my heir apparents. If you let them through, I can exile them. If you don't let them through, I can return them to my hand, and I can still play them back onto the field and re-trigger them. So either way, if both these are out on the field, I can actually get the heir apparent to go off regardless when I attack you with it, provided that it gets through unblockable. Now, or no, it doesn't matter. If you block it, yeah. That's the whole point of this. Yeah. So this is a fantastic combo too. This is a wonderful combo. And then the third one is just really easy really good because it lets me do the ability over and over again. It costs a bit, but it's worth it in my opinion for this deck. So, 1 white to put it onto the field, meticulous excavation, Pay 2 and a white, return target permanent you control to its owner's hand. If it has Unearth, you would exile it and then return that card to its owner's hand. I do not have a lot of stuff with Unearth, so this card was perfect for this deck. Because I can then, once again, pay the cost to put the Heir Apparent in my hand, pay the cost to put the Heir Apparent on the field, pay the cost to put the Heir Apparent in my hand. If I had a way to get infinite mana, I could create an infinite army of bunnies. I do not have a way to make infinite mana in this deck, unfortunately. That is not what this deck's goal is. And that is why this deck is going to sit comfortably at a bracket 1, bracket 2. But I'm just saying this is a thing you could do if you wanted to upgrade this deck. If you guys like this deck and you want to build your own, a really good idea to upgrade this deck would be to find a way to create infinite white mana. Because if you can find a way to make infinite white mana, you can create an infinite loop and build a massive amount of bunnies to swing with. Rites of Flourishing came with this commander deck, and I felt comfortable leaving it in here because I have some other landfall stuff that I'm putting into my landfall deck that I'm currently building, and I didn't feel like it needed that. I felt like this deck needed it more. So at the beginning of each player's draw step, that player draws an additional card, which is nice. And each player may play an additional land on each of their turns, which is also nice. It's very group huggy, which is what I want this deck to be. I want this deck to be very group huggy. I want this deck to be very, I love you all, I'm going to share everything with you, and then I'm just going to beat you down with a whole bunch of cute furriness. So that's why I thought this was a perfect card to leave in here. And the final card of the deck, which this is the card that I've been saving to show off with the 4 common goods, so I'm going to bring this back over here. This is probably the best card in this deck. This card makes this deck insane. And when I play this card, while this is out, the chance that I've made a copy of something that I really want to make 1,000 copies of is crazy. So let's get to it. The card in my hand is Reflections of Litjar. I was actually considering leaving this for my vampire deck. This originally was going into my zombie deck. Did not make the cut. Was going to go in my rogues deck. Did not make the cut. Was going to go in my vampires deck. And then I realized, what the heck am I doing? If I put this in my bunnies deck, I will have so many bunnies. First off, never mind the obvious. Let's just look at the non-obvious thing. Every card in my deck except for that one frog is a bunny. So I could copy the Bloomburrow form thing, and I have access to 2 of those just in case you wipe out one, I have an extra one to recycle stuff back into my deck. The card that gives a boost to all my bunnies and gives me a card draw when my bunnies come into play. I can make a copy of it. Basically, I can make a copy of any non-legendary bunny. And there are only 3 legendary bunnies in this deck. The commander, the one that lets me tap to draw a card and give a life, and everybody else can do the same, and Phineas. Those are the only 3 legendary bunnies in the entire deck. Everything else is non-legendary. I can even copy that stupid one that gets all the star power from all the different tokens that are on the field. So then it becomes a 2/2 automatically because there's 2 copies of it on the field. They'll see each other. And in addition to that, they'll see all the other bunnies. I'll have 2 huge swinging beasts. Now, going back to the obvious though, the best part about having this in here is every heir apparent will come in with a copy of a heir apparent. So, while again, you don't see the heir apparents as they come into field, there was actually a really cool card that I was originally considering including in this deck because it allowed me to play all my mana cost 2 or lower cards from my graveyard at one time. But I realized that the heir apparents wouldn't see each other coming in, so unless I had one heir apparent already on the board, that would really not help me. Whereas this is fantastic. As long as I already have one heir apparent on the board, the next time I play a heir apparent, I'll have 3. And they'll make 2 bunny tokens, 1 each, based on the first heir apparent. Then when I play my next heir apparent, I'll have 5. Those 2 that come in will each see the first 3 that are there, make 3 bunny tokens each, give me 8 bunny tokens in total. Now, that just pops off and goes insane. And then you bring in the 4 common good. I could target any of the bunny tokens that I've made using this. Create an army of those tokens. Say the one that I just talked about with the starch power and trample. Or the one that's going to boost my bunnies by +1/+1. Make not infinite, but like make, say, a wicked number of copies of those. Say I pay 5 mana into this. I'm going to even just make 2 copies, let's say. Whatever. I make 2 copies. And then all my tokens give me life gain, and all my tokens gain indestructible. And then all my tokens now have an extra buff. Like, it just... The playoff of these 2 cards was just so good that I just could not leave this for my vampire deck. I was like, no. Plus, there's at least 7 vampires that are legendary, I think, in my vampire deck right now. And I still haven't edited it yet, so there might be more going in there. Whereas, like I say, there's only 3 bunnies that I can't copy with this. So, yeah. Anywho, that is my Bouncing Bunny Beatdown deck. Also known as Oops, All But One Bunny. And now I'm going to struggle to put it back in the box because that is the one downside to the way these boxes are built. They are not the best, but they have the cutest artwork, so I like to keep the decks in them for that reason. Alright. As promised, Kaiba, I have reached the end of the video. I will put out the rest of your bacon. You are the bestest puppy. There you go. Okay. Here's your bacon. Yes, you had a little nap while I was finishing up that video, eh? You got tired. I know. You good puppy. Aww. Yummy, yummy bacons. Okay? There you go. Yeah. I know. Such a hard life being a pug, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. You gonna do it yourself? You eat it yourself then. Yeah. Anywho, happy Easter, everyone. We hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode of Super Deck Sunday. And with that said, much love to you all from Cap of the Puck and myself to you. Take care and have a wonderful week. Love you all. Bye. The Easter bacon is yummy. Yeah. Aw. Good boy. Yes, you good boy. Yes, we can go home now.